This is ChristianBuddy.net, and coming with Cipriano Roybal this evening, American Liberty Ministry. Jim, you'd like to introduce everything and get us going with some prayer here, brother?
Called the Slavery Amendment. So we're going to look at this little clip talking a little bit more about the original 13th Amendment, because, you know, this is really some good information that we should all be familiar with about what our government and the changes in our government. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and get over here and let's take a look.
In the winter of 1983, archival research expert David Dodge and former Baltimore police investigator Tom Dunn were searching for evidence of government corruption in public records stored in the Belfast Library on the coast of Maine. By chance, they discovered the library's oldest authentic copy of the Constitution of the United States, printed in 1825. Both men were stunned to see that this document included a 13th Amendment that no longer appears on current copies of the Constitution. Moreover, after studying the amendment's language and historical context, they realized the principal intent of this missing 13th Amendment was to prohibit attorneys from serving in government. So began a 7-year nationwide search for the truth surrounding the most bizarre constitutional puzzle in American history, the unlawful removal of a ratified amendment from the Constitution of the United States. Dodge and Dunn have uncovered additional copies of the Constitution with the missing 13th Amendment, printed in at least 18 separate publications by 10 different states and territories over 4 decades, from 1822 to 1860. In June of 1991, Dodge uncovered the evidence that this missing 13th Amendment had indeed been lawfully ratified by the state of Virginia and was therefore an authentic amendment to the United States Constitution. If the evidence is correct and no logical errors have been made, a 13th Amendment restricting lawyers from serving in government was ratified in 1819 and removed from our Constitution during the tumult of the unpleasantness between the Union and the Confederacy. Since the amendment was never lawfully repealed, it is still law today. The implications are enormous.
So with that, and it's a short little piece, we're going to go with some more information, but I wanted to start off with that because it was really important what you were saying. It was really talking about what was going on with the attorneys at the time. And so there was a report from Congress, and we're going to look at that report because this report, when we go here, I'm going to give you some idea of what happened. This is from the actual committee. This is the House of Representatives, the 81st Congress, second session. And this is a report number 3123, the report on the National Lawyers Guild, a legal bulwark of the Communist Party. So there was an investigation back in the 50s about this particular issue. Its concern was, of course, the committee was looking for what they call un-American activities. And so it follows on to say something that's really, really important here that I found very interesting. It says the National Lawyers Guild is the foremost legal bulwark of the Communist Party, its front organizations and controlled unions. Since its inception, it has never failed to rally to the legal defense of the Communist Party and individual members thereof, including known espionage agents. It has constantly fought against national, state, and local legislation aimed at curbing the communist conspiracy. It has been most articulated in its attacks upon all agencies of the government seeking to expose or prosecute the subversive activities of the communist network, including national, state, and local investigative committees, the Department of Justice, the FBI, law enforcement agencies generally, through its affiliations with the International Association of Democratic Lawyers and International Communist Front Organization. The National Lawyers Guild has constituted itself as an agent of a foreign principle hostile to the interest of the United States. It has gone far afield to oppose the foreign policies of the United States in line with the current line of the Soviet Union. So that was in 1950. Now, this particular document, you're just seeing page 7 on top. This is actually a 60-page report. I just wanted to just highlight that because this is some very important things. And then right around that particular time frame, we had this actually happen. Some of us are familiar with the Great American Adventure and Secrets of America. This is what I called it. And this is expressing two very forms of government. Of course, this is the first. This is the original Constitution. This is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. This is the Constitution for the United States of America, adopted September 17, 1789, in effect March 4th, 1789. And Article 5 is a process for ratification by the people. And what that really means is that any law that Congress actually passes within their own house, which would be the House of Representatives or the Senate, it is required for it to go to the states and to the people for it to be ratified. That's in the original Constitution. But the other thing that I found very interesting is our flag. And our flag actually has meaning when we look at the flag. Red is bravery, white is honesty, and blue is justice. So it's really interesting what a lot of these things represent to us. And ironically, even the United States Supreme Court agrees with the people who claim to be sovereign citizens, American nationals, state nationals of the Republic. The Supreme Court held that the American people, that's you and I, are in fact sovereign rulers and not the state or the government. The court went on to define that local, state, and federal law enforcement and judicial officers were and are committing unlawful acts against the people by enforcing unconstitutional laws, and they are actually personally liable for their actions. That's a United States Supreme Court case bond versus the United States. And it's really interesting we're using the word sovereignty. And a lot of times, a lot of people look at this word sovereign citizen as something that's really we shouldn't be even talking about. And there's a lot of organizations that will slam people for using that term. So we're not using that term in a negative. We're using that term in the positive as to what bond versus the United States in that particular case and what it meant. It meant that the people were sovereign. That's really what they were talking about. But the other side to this coin of what's happened, which you will find interesting, there is a second constitution. And this constitution is a state corporation government. It is a government of a corporation, by a corporation, for the corporation foreign stockholders. And this is the Constitution of the United States. U.S. Congress, the Act of 1871, created a foreign corporation with stockholders, a board of directors, also known as the United States. Do you still wonder why things are the way they are? Well, here's part of what has happened. If we look at we the people were corporate subjects under the 14th Amendment. After the Civil War, the Reconstruction Amendments, starting with the 13th Amendment and not ratified by the people, you and I, as required in Article 5. So we already have an issue that got started way back then. And then at that particular time, what started happening was excuse me, I need to pull that up again. This particular thing happened. So in that particular time frame, what's happened is, and some of you may have actually have heard of Dun and Bradstreet. We've talked about Dun and Bradstreet before. It's like the credit bureau for profit corporations. And so they have, every corporation has its corporate number. And so we were just talking about the United States being a corporation. Well, here under Dun and Bradstreet is the actual corporation, the Dun and Bradstreet number for the corporation called the United States. And what's happened, as you'll see here, is a lot of the departments that we know now have actually incorporated and are actually corporations, just like Walmart, just like, you know, the Bank of America, and they have their policies. And so that's what's happened here. And so these are all what they call the alphabet agencies, and they're all tied in, and they all have their own number. And this is what's happened. So what also happened is the states did the same thing. So even New Mexico did the same thing. So for example, if you look at the state of New Mexico, actually as I've always mentioned to you and all of these other states, the New Mexico, which is right here, its actual Dun and Bradstreet number is right here, 007-111-818. That's its number. This is for the state of New Mexico. But I have also shared with you guys, when you go to our Constitution, you will find that when you look in Article 1, it actually says that the name of this state is New Mexico. It's not the state of New Mexico, it's New Mexico. And one of the things that we always hear, well, you know that the state of New Mexico is also identified by capital N, capital M. But if you go to the Republic, the People's Constitution of the state of New Mexico, the New Mexico, it's actually N period, MEX period. That identifies the Constitution, the Republic of New Mexico. And some of you might remember that, you know, like, for example, the Republic of California used to be, or it still is, CALIF period. That identified the Republic of California. Of course, if you look here, this would be the state. If you look it up, we can find here, there's the state of California. Colorado, if you look at Colorado, the Republic of Colorado used to be, or still is, COL period, if I remember right. So, you know, here's where we have some differences of learning what the Republic states are and the corporate states. And that's what this is about. But we can take this even a little bit further. Now we've seen national, if you would, corporations and state corporations. But we have, for our surprise here, you may have heard of this particular organization called the United Nations. It also has, it's a corporation, and it has some agencies. right here, it's Dun& Bradstreet number. It's for-profit corporation number. So one of the things we've been having some, if you would, some concerns with, and that is with the World Health Organization, known as the WHO. It also is, and of course, the International Child's Education Fund, the World Food Program, these education, science, these are all corporations. These are under the parent corporation. This one is known as the United Nations. Of course, when you're looking at these agencies up here for the corporation United States, it's sub-corporations, which means this is the parent. All these other ones are the sub-corporations to the United States. That was the first one created. It was created under the Act of 1871. Congress created it. And unfortunately, what this really means is if we go back and we look at the Revolutionary War and why we had one was the king was forcing his corporations on the people and subjecting them. And if you may have heard this thing called would be license, regulations, and taxation without representation. So we even had a problem back then that they wanted to correct. And so that's what they did. So in the very first convention for the Constitution, what actually happened is it was either Madison, and I can't remember, it was either Madison or Jefferson, and I think it was Madison, who in that very first convention said, we no longer want corporations representing the people because we just came out of a Revolutionary War where the king was subjecting the people. And unfortunately, what's really happened is we have been subject again under the 14th Amendment. And next week, we're going to be looking at the 14th Amendment and see what happened. Because what's going on here is that we're not actually running the people's government. So we have two governments going on at one time. And we actually have an opportunity. A lot of people are looking at, and we'll be looking at the 14th Amendment about being a U.S. citizen or a state national citizen. And what that really means is, if you go back to our history, you will see that from the first 7 generations of our government, when it was created, then I'm talking about the presidents, all the way through, everyone was actually a state citizen. And they were actually holding an office for the compact called the United States, created by the states. So one of the things I'm always reminded of is, well, if the states came together and created the United States, then how can the child have authority over the parent? Because it was the states that created the United States. It wasn't the United States that created the states. So, there's some misunderstanding that, we need to correct and say, well, we understand that it was the original 13 states that came together, created what they call a federal compact, federal meaning a contract. So they contracted to give certain authorities and powers to the federal government for the benefit of the states and the people. And this is the structure that was actually laid out. And we have 3 branches, and one should not interfere with the other. They should be working in harmony. We're having some issues now, even in Congress, talking about doing what they call a ethics rules for the Supreme Court. Well, they really should have no business doing that, and they already got it anyways. So, there's some issues that need to be addressed, and I'm grateful that some of the congressmen and some of the senators are looking at it and saying, why are we doing this again when we already have it? So this just gives you some information, some ideas of our history. One of the other things I wanted to bring up in this particular set of things was, I'm going to see if I can just pull it up for you real quick here, because I think this is a part that is interesting when we start looking at what actually happened, and we're looking at one of the things that came up that I found very interesting when we were looking about what these foreign actors are really doing, and if these actors are really foreign as what we're talking about as attorneys. Well, one of the things I wanted to share with you guys was this particular document here. And some of you may have heard of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, that's FARA. It actually was enacted in 1938. What this really means, if there's any attorneys or other officials or ambassadors or so forth coming in and working with the Senate or whoever may be with the FBI, whatever, they're actually supposed to be under the FARA, which is actually under the Department of Justice. And its purpose is to make sure that we're not having any espionage issues, so on and so forth. And if we had any issues, this is how you actually address the issues. It's through this particular agency under the Department of Justice. So I wanted to share that with you because there's a lot of information, but yet this thing is really for our benefit to understand. I'm always reminded about Hosea 4:6. Our people perish for lack of knowledge. And this is what we need to do. We need to educate, make sure we're up to speed with what is really going on. Do we have any comments, any suggestions, anything that might have clicked on you guys?
Go, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, go on. Go. That's a lot of information here, but you're bringing to mind on the corporation issue itself again, and the states being a corporation, and they're not supposed to be corporate, it's supposed to be sovereign, and we're bringing it up again, and you're bringing up some other issues here that are dealing with the 13th Amendment here, dealing with the original, the nobility clause, and then you brought up about it that was not even discovered. I mean, there's a lot of information you're bringing up here. It's like knowledge to us. I don't have any real detailed understanding of all of it, though, unfortunately. I'm learning.
Yeah, and I have a comment there, Cipriano. Maybe it's a question as well. Let me ask the question part first. Is the original law still in effect if we have this corporate system that is pretty much the establishment now? Is the original still operative?
Yes, it is. It is because it had not been
ratified.
The term, it has not been repealed.
Okay.
Never repealed. See, here's the thing about the original Constitution. It's a republic. Because of the fact that this is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, it is the people that actually make the final decision of all laws. What our representatives are supposed to do is they're supposed to create laws, bring it to the states, bring it to the people. The people look at it, review it, and by vote decide whether they want to enact it or not. We don't talk about the ones that they never enacted. We only talk about the ones that people have actually voted for and enacted, because those are the ones we know, right? But believe it or not, there's quite a bit of them that were actually up. Like, for example, the Bill of Rights. There was actually 13 of them, and they broke it down to 10 because some of the states and some of the individuals did not, and we didn't have a majority on it, so they finally came up with 10. So that gives you an example of some of the ones that didn't make it and how it was actually reconstructed so that we could pass whatever we passed. And that's how we got from 13, we got to 10, the original Bill of Rights, the 10 Bill of Rights, 10 amendments, excuse me.
10 amendments. Okay. So the jurisdiction, if you were entering into a court relationship on any of these things, let's say, I know it's not normally accepted, but it sounds to me, if it's still in effect, that you could claim the jurisdiction of the common law, the not instead of the corporate law. Basically, is what we're talking about here. You could have that could be done.
It could be done. Unfortunately, it has not been successful because not enough people are aware of it to inform our servants to make that happen. And that's what's going on now. A lot of folks are picking it up. I'm understanding that we're already approximately somewhere around 36 million and growing fast. It's growing so fast that we can't keep up with the numbers because people are going and redoing their citizenship back to the state citizen. Here's the difference. United States citizen does not have any constitutional rights. you have constitutional rights as a state citizen. And that's the biggest difference. They didn't tell us that, but that's what the way it was. And so because people are actually being informed, finding these things out, and they're actually, what they're doing is they're changing their status from a United States citizen subject to a state citizen with all rights reserved.
Okay. And I know you have touched on that in the past and even given some details on it, but it's been a while, probably a year or so, before we looked at that. But obviously people are becoming concerned because of the many of the things that are going on, and many of the people just feel they're just being left out. Any rights they may have had are not there anymore. Even the right to be able to speak these, have a concern about some of these things and bring it before a forum or our government agency or whatever. It seems like it's all kind of coming together, and the people are coming with those concerns, saying, "Hey, listen, nobody's listening anymore. I heard that we were the government by the people for the people, but we don't see that anymore." And is that part of what you're talking about here with the 30 million people or whatever?
Yes, it is, because these are the people that have actually been educating themselves, getting with other agencies, or I'm not going to say agencies, I should say other individuals who are addressing these issues, and they're moving forward. And there's several organizations now that are doing it. They're actually helping people process their application so that they can become national state citizens according to the code. And there is a code and there are rules, and it actually lays it out, and you can actually reapply your citizenship. And what they really mean by that is through the Department of State, United States State Department, you can change your status. And that's how you start making the process, because we were all just, if you would, guided to become U.S. citizens, not being aware of what that really meant. And when you find out, then that means you can now make a choice and make a difference, because there is Supreme Court case law like Hill versus Hinkle, which gives the example between an individual and a corporation. And as an individual, we have unlimited power to contract, whereas a corporation, we don't. We're actually subject to the state because it's in the contract. We knowingly, voluntarily subject ourselves, but we can, with having the power of unlimited power as an individual, we can change that. That's the gift. That's the difference.
Yeah. Cipriano, let me ask you this out there. Why was there just a wave of the wand and we were all converted over to U.S. citizens, or what? Why are we?
If you would, the powers to be wanted control, and it goes back to what I always call the mode of operation, the MO, to kill, steal, and destroy by lies. That's the first thing that I see in all this whole thing. And so when we talk about law, we're always talking about really God's law. I always talk about Jefferson talking about the principles, the ancient principles, the 10 Commandments. And so there's the difference. And legal has no avenue to protect you and your rights, because you're subject. You don't have none. So there is none to talk about. If you go to a court now under a corporate structure, then if you talk about the Constitution, you can be in contempt of court because you have no business there. Unfortunately, we haven't been taught that. That's the problem. And now we're teaching that, and we're bringing it back so that the people will know. I remember it because of the fact of being with the Sheriff's Department back in the 70s, before New Mexico did the change in our Constitution in 1986, when they created a statewide statute jurisdiction, which really is unconstitutional, and even the New Mexico Constitution. It's unconstitutional. And the reason for that is in that structure,